Let us talk about Murder Boy, okay? This guy up in Buffalo. The Daily Wire has a policy that we're not supposed to name mass shooters. They think the mass shooter might be motivated by getting fame, so we won't want to give him any fame. I don't know if that's going to do any good, but it's certainly not going to do any harm, and I'm perfectly happy. So I'm going to just call this guy Murder Boy. This is an 18-year-old kid. He starts doing crazy stuff in school. He comes to school like in a hazmat suit. I mean, he's obviously having some kind of psychotic break. He was at an at-home online school project, and he was asked what he wanted to do after graduation. And he said, I want to commit murder-suicide. So the state cops take him to a mental hospital for a day, and he convinced them it was a joke, and they release him. And, I have to say, by the way, about this, one of the many lines of inquiry after mass shootings that I'm not that interested in is that law enforcement somehow failed to do anything, or that the social services failed to do anything. I'm out of temper with law enforcement right now because of the corruption at the FBI, but most cops are just trying to keep people safe, trying to do a good job of policing the community. They just can't be on every single joke that a kid makes. You don't want them to be. You don't want them hounding everybody because they say something. We don't want our speech policed, and we don't really have a mental health system in this country that can catch this stuff. So I'm not really sure the police failed on this at all. But anyway, all along, he convinces the psychiatrist, that he was just clowning around like a teenager might stupidly do. But meanwhile, he's on these dark websites, and he's writing like 700 pages of nutcase stuff. He hates blacks. He hates Jews. He hates Fox News. He hates Ben Shapiro. He had a picture of Ben Shapiro. And he's got this whole thing about the great replacement theory. This is the idea. I think the idea is that evil Jews are replacing whites with other races. I'm not sure why. I'll have to ask Shapiro. Shapiro, why are you replacing whites? Stop that. Stop, Shapiro. It's getting to be like Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Knock it off. But anyway, the guy's obviously a nut. And then he goes out tragically, and I always say everything is funny in life except other people's pain. And here he goes out to a supermarket, which he picked because he thought, because of the zip code where he figured a lot of black people would be there. He opens fire. He murders 10 people. Absolute tragedy. And so the reaction in the press. We remember that crazy black guy in how do you pronounce it? Waukesha, Wisconsin. He supported Hitler and Black Lives Matter, and he threatened violence against white people. He drove his SUV into a Christmas parade, killed 6 people, including a little kid, injured 62 people. And we remember how quickly Joe Biden pushed off to Wisconsin to comfort the afflicted there. We remember this exchange between Peter Doocy and Jen Psaki is cut 4.
Why hasn't the president visited the members of this Christmas parade attack?
Well, I would say first, as you saw the president convey last week, our hearts go out to this community, to the people in Waukesha, that we've been in touch, obviously, with officials there, and we're all watching as people are recovering, and this is such a difficult time of year for this to happen. It's difficult any time. Obviously, any president going to visit a community requires a lot of assets, requires taking their resources, and it's not something that I have a trip previewed at this point in time, but we remain in touch with local officials, and certainly our hearts are with the community as they've gone through such a difficult time.
Yeah, so nothing, right down the memory hole. The press covered it as if the guy didn't exist, as if the man driving the car didn't even exist, let alone saying that he was black. He wasn't even there. The Washington Post actually wrote a story where they said an SUV drove into the Christmas parade, as if nobody was driving the car with no motivation, nothing. We've got to arrest those SUVs. We got to, when the SUVs make threats, we've got to call them in. Why do the police overlook those rampant SUVs? Anyway, they did absolutely nothing, but this time you will be shocked to hear these Democrats, and they are despicable. They are just despicable, led by Despicable Joe. They all in on Murder Boy because Murder Boy was kind of saying, he hated the right, he hated Fox News, but he basically had this theory that the left has pinned on the right, this replacement theory. And so this is a blunt way to say it, but it's the truth. They use the bodies of dead black Americans as a podium, and they stand on it in order to condemn the right. And here's what Joe Biden went up there immediately, goes up to Buffalo, where nobody's been, by the way. Buffalo is a struggling city, a place with real problems, but nobody's done a damn thing about it because the Democrats in New York are too busy paying attention to New York City, where their base is. They're ignoring Buffalo. But Biden is off, he shuffles off to Buffalo. Here's cut 6. Here's what he says.
Through the media and politics, the internet, has radicalized, angry, alienated, lost, and isolated individuals into falsely believing that they will be replaced, that's the word, replaced, by the other, by people who don't look like them and who are therefore in a perverse ideology that they possess and being fed lesser beings. I and all of you reject the lie. I call on all Americans to reject the lie. And I condemn those who spread the lie for power, political gain, and for profit.
So let's take a look, since our Despicable Joe president is touting this, let's take a look at some of these right-wing conspiracy nuts who are talking about replacing the white people in this country with other kinds of people in order to sway the country in a certain political direction. This is from our friends at the Media Research Center. This is cut number 1.
Because of demographic changes in this country, I think that the Democratic Party is going to win Texas moving forward, and the Democratic Party is going to be in power for the next 30, 40 years.
The demographic change that's happening in America right now gives the upper hand to Democrats.
This census that just came out especially drives home the point that Texas is next.
It's a state where the demographics are changing in ways that are favorable to the Democratic Party.
Demographic changes that help the Democrats.
Democrats for a decade now, along with Arizona and Texas, have had on this sort of long-term project of trying to take some red states across the Sun Belt and flip them blue as demographic changes are taking place there.
Democrats should be asking themselves, as a matter of fact, why aren't they dominating the political landscape? 2 decades ago, the influential book, The Emerging Democratic Majority, predicted they would due to demographic changes in the country.
We've been predicting for some time that demographic changes were going to eventually move North Carolina, Georgia, Texas.
So those were those right-wing conspiracy. Oh, wait, those were all left-wing commentators celebrating the fact that because of illegal immigration, because of the vicious, ruthless, dangerous destruction of our borders that has let drugs come pouring in, Trump tried to stop them, but the Democrats have taken off those holds. The fentanyl is flooding in again. Criminals are flooding in. People with COVID are flooding in. You know, every country has a border except for this one when the Democrats are in charge, and they have been declaring in the media, in the left-wing media, which is almost all the media, that soon the Democrats would win elections forever. And Morning Joe keeps saying demographics is destiny. And the reason they keep saying this is because they're racist. They think that if you're not voting for them, you ain't black. It's the most racist ideology ever. And somehow this is all Tucker Carlson's fault, and something must be done about Tucker Carlson. Carl Cameron, I love Carl Cameron. This guy is a really left-wing journalist who spent 20 years at Fox News, was their chief political correspondent, which shows you how one-sided Fox is. Fox has more leftists on their air in a week than NBC has real solid right-wingers on their show in a month, okay? So Carl Cameron, he knows what needs to be done with Tucker Carlson and all these people who are talking about this. This is cut 12.
We got to watch out because the Republicans have become the purveyors of misinformation. And when our two-party system is broken like that, democracy is seriously in trouble. The president acknowledged that. It's time to actually start doing things and maybe taking some names and putting people in jail.
That's what we got to do with Tucker. We got to take that guy down. The governor of New York, I can't remember, Hochul, the woman's an idiot, governor idiot. She's saying we've got to shut down any website. We got to search for those keywords and shut down any website. If they stop talking about demographic shift as destiny in this country, Morning Joe would be off the air, MSNBC would be off the air. I'll tell you who wouldn't be off the air, Tucker Carlson. I watch Tucker Carlson, not all the time, but a lot, and he basically has said, and I've noticed this too, is that if this is their strategy, if letting the border open to let in new people so they'll vote Democrat is their strategy, it's not working. It's not working. People from south of the border who come over here and become American citizens and vote are moving toward the right because they can see what buffoons these people are. Blacks are moving a little slower, but they're starting to move a little bit too. Why? Because people of other colors are people. And eventually they start to see, oh, this doesn't work. This isn't good for me. I'm not going to do this anymore. And this whole thing about demographics is destiny happens happens to be wrong because racism is wrong. The whole theory of race as essential is wrong. And the Democrats have been using that forever. If they can just convince you that everybody hates you, then you'll vote for them because they said this. Democrats, I swear, I said this before and I mean it. The Democrats treat our black citizens like garbage. They treat them like animals. They say, well, blacks are doing poorly in school. We have to lower the standards. We have to get rid of tests. You say, well, why don't you just raise the schools? Why don't you teach them, find better methods of teaching? It's like, we're not going to do that. You say, well, blacks are getting arrested. We have to start decriminalizing crime. You think, well, why not, go into their communities and start to talk about crime and what can be done about it. Like, for instance, keeping families together and having churches that actually preach the gospel. Those are things that actually help against crime and have been shown to help. No, we can't do that because they believe that black people can't improve. They're so disrespectful. It's so infuriating that they then sell this. So anyway, it's all Tucker Carlson's fault. This mad killer, this guy who's like a lunatic, he barely knows where he is. He is obviously to me schizophrenic. I mean, he's obviously having a schizophrenic break. This is the age, 17, 18 is the age when schizophrenia typically turns up. And I think it's just turned up in him. One of the heartbreaking things he said in his manifesto was, something in my heart tells me there's a better way, but logic convinces me that this is what I must do. And that is what happens to people with bad philosophies. God is talking to you. He's saying, dude, wake up, come back on the love side. And your mind is going, yeah, but this is, I gotta kill these people. I gotta do this. It's logic. It's just a very, very sad thing to watch this kid go down the drain. And then, of course, he loses all sympathy because he has created such a tragedy. But it's not just Tucker Carlson. We don't want to single Tucker Carlson out. Here is lawyer and commentator Bakari Sellers telling us the real problem. That's cut 9.
The tragedy in this is that it's a cycle. This is who America is. We have this racist attack. We have outrage. We have thoughts and prayers. We have political back and forth. And then we have an entire cycle where it happens over and over and over again.
So this is who America is. America is a schizophrenic gunman who hates black people. That's who America is. That's how Bakari Sellers got his legal degree. That's how he got on TV, because America is this crazed gunman going around. Well, let's take a look. Let's take a look at some of the rising racism in the only white majority country on earth that has ever elected a black leader twice. Let's take a look at the rising tide of racism. Here is a sample of racism collected by the Washington Post. It includes Oprah Winfrey talking. This is cut number 2.
You still have your whiteness. That's what the term white privilege is. It means that whiteness still gives you an advantage no matter what.
If you are not careful, your children will live their whole life white. And at 26, 27, they'll end up being a part of the problem because you just let them and allowed them to live a completely white, sheltered, and cultureless life.
Whiteness is not phenotypic whiteness. There's white people and there's people who happen to be white, for sure. Anyone that is born in the world, because whiteness is global, can absolutely abide by tenets of whiteness. This is why we have Candace Owens. This is why we have Daniel J. Cameron. This is why we have black folks who will say critical race theory is trash.
I'm still just really confused by whiteness. I'm sorry,
Whiteness represents white guilt, white fragility, white supremacy, white violence. All of these things are now synonymous with whiteness, which I see as a stand-in for white supremacy.
That's amazing. I will take responsibility for things that bad white people have done in the past just as soon as I collect royalties for things white people have invented. I mean, it's absurd. It is absurd racism. And again, it comes from this Foucault philosophy of power. You heard her say Candace Owens is white because she doesn't agree with this philosophy. So if you don't agree with the philosophy, you're white. You ain't black. You're white. It's all about the power defining things. It's all this Foucault idea that truth is not truth. Your truth is not truth because you have the power. But my truth is truth because I don't have power. And power defines truth. So I don't have power, so it's not truth, but it is truth because I don't have power, but you have power, so your truth isn't true. I mean, that's basically what, it's just the complete, what it comes down to in the end is what we say is true. Get in line or you are going to be silenced. That's what it comes down to. Because when you think that all truth is power, there's only power. There is no truth. When you believe in reason, when you believe in logic, when you believe in the love of the heart, then we have something to talk about. And we're just two human beings sitting together, no matter what color we are, We're sitting together trying to find the way forward. It's a very different world that we're talking about. Yes, truth is hard to find, and you approach it by half measures, but you approach it through reason, by language, meaning what it means, and by agreeing, basically, that we must love our neighbors as we love ourselves. That's how you get to any kind of truth. For more Klavan-y goodness, like and subscribe to the Andrew Klavan Podcast wherever you get your podcasts.